Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm joined by Greg Williams of the Rox Lyfe Podcast. Greg is at the forefront of the Hyrox community and is one of the most trusted names in the sport. Today we discuss Hyrox training, nutrition, post-competition recovery, threshold work, zone 2, baseline fitness, and the art of balancing the intense training needed for Hyrox with necessary rest. We also talk about podcasting and supplementation, and I also ask him about his own path, touching on his background as a nutritionist and an entrepreneur, and what it was like meeting World Champion Hunter Macintyre for the first time, and whether he agrees with Hunter on this whole no squatting in season rule. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Greg Williams. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I've just done a tough session, so
Have you?
I'm a bit fried, but I'm good. I'm good.
What did you do?
It was a bit of a funny one. It was 8 kilometer run easy, and then 8 kilometers at like thresholdy sort of pace, so 16k in total, which is quite a long run for me.
Right. Okay.
And like I was just clinging on. Like I'd done the final 8 kilometers like on the treadmill, just set the pace and just hung on. But it was just I was like 500 meters in, thinking this is gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Like, it was like I was like, and it's just I don't know. Like I weren't ever fully like maxing out my heart rate or anything like that. But it was just like just sitting there for whatever it was, 36 minutes, 30, 35, whatever it was, just uncomfortable. But that's what you got to do, right?
That's what you got to do. So, do you do your own programming, or?
I do at the moment, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
I did have a coach, but the last 6 months or so, I've been doing my own one, which I quite enjoy. And I know, like you should everyone should have a coach and all that sort of stuff. But I've used, obviously talked to a lot of people, and then I had a coach up to 6 months ago, so I took a lot from what from working with him, but just applying it to myself now, and like what I think is important, what isn't important, like specifically for the sport. I had a bad-ish race in Birmingham in October. Like most of my races have been PBs, which I know like you can't always do in Hyrox, but most of them have. And then like I had a bad race in Birmingham in October, but I think I learned a lot from that. I think in hindsight it was a good thing, because you can sort of see what the training I had been missing up to that point. Yeah, and apply like
what do you think you're missing on that particular one?
I think I've been doing a lot of running that was either zone 2 easy sort of stuff, or like intense intervals, so whatever, 800 meter intervals, but then a couple of minutes rest in between those. And the reality is that like Hyrox isn't either of those things.
No threshold.
No, the threshold work was like very limited. Yeah.
That's interesting, because coincidentally, that's basically the same as my first ever Hyrox, which was Birmingham last year, because I did it last minute, mid-plan. So I hadn't done any threshold work. So I totally get it. Like, and then when you add that threshold work in, it's like, oh, wow. Like those 1Ks are just like, that's like the icing on the cake, isn't it? Yeah.
And just, I remember I'd done like this sim, only like a very, very scaled down sim, not long before the event. And I remember thinking, oh God, like I've not had this feeling. Like I was doing a run and then really craving, like just stopping, because that's what I'd been used to. I'd been it'd been getting intense, and then you back off and then just completely stop. Yeah. And the reality is like you don't do that for 60, 70, 80, 90 minutes in Hyrox. Is fairly constant. So that threshold work, I think is important. And obviously you can't training isn't about just like replicating exactly what Hyrox feels like every single session or anything like that, but I've certainly placed greater importance on the threshold work since that in Birmingham.
Yeah, it's easy to drop those because zone 2, obviously there's all the science and the benefits, but it's also easy. So zone 2 is quite easy just to be like, oh yeah, I'll get my zone 2 work in. But yeah, like recognizing sometimes, actually, am I just avoiding the hard thing that I should be doing?
Yeah.
So how'd you get? How was Washington? Were you racing over there? Was it just? Were you just?
No, I weren't racing. I was just working. So I was just there for the commentary. Did the commentary on the Friday night, which was good. Good races, good experience to do. Great city, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then then we have some work to do on the Saturday morning as well. So there's this like coffee and champs thing that we do, where we sit with a couple of the athletes the morning after and review the race and talk about the race, and like that all goes up on YouTube. So there's still work the day after the race. So I didn't really get time to race myself. But at the same time, like I'm not really one. I don't really love racing too often, and so I weren't that fussed about racing in reality. When I was out there, I just, I'd done Manchester and then I'd done Vienna a couple of weeks after that, and I don't really feel like the need to race again and put myself through that again. I have to be mentally ready for it as well, and then also like with the travel and then doing the commentary the night before, and then like you don't really eat as well as you could or drink as well as you could. Like it's not the greatest prep for a race, so I weren't that fussed about doing it, so I didn't.
Yeah, sure. So what is a typical week for you? Like, I presume you're doing this full time. Like, talk me through that. How much of it is podcast work? Are you doing anything else?
So Rox Lyfe is my full time work. Yeah, and that's like quite varied. So there's the podcast, there's the website, there's the Instagram and socials and stuff like that, and then there's like the ad hoc commentary stuff that I'm doing for Hyrox. But it's primarily, podcast and then website work. And also, like, I mean, we make our money through a range of places, but like coaching. Like I'm working with Paul Gillingham, who's working with the clients, but like we're taking on those clients. Sometimes do nutrition calls because I'm a nutritionist, so I help people from a nutrition perspective for Hyrox. So my work is writing articles for the website, social media stuff, and then sending out a weekly newsletter as well for like the Rox Lyfe, and then doing the podcast, and that's as you know, preparing for the podcast, doing the podcast, finding people for it, and then like editing it, uploading it, all that sort of stuff. So it's quite timely, really.
Yeah, awesome. And were you before you did the podcast, were you just a nutritionist, or were you doing something else? What's your sort of career background look like up until this point?
When I left school or sixth form at school, I worked for Ford Motor Company in finance. So like got my accounting qualifications and worked in accounting and then finance for, I don't know, like 15 years. And all the time I like wanted to run my own business, do my own thing, and I had like some side hustles and bits like that. But eventually I left Ford and was doing my own nutrition business, which was initially that was helping people like body composition perspective, really just, wanting to lose weight and things like that. But then when I left Ford, it was more focused on helping people with like digestive health issues. So my wife had ulcerative colitis, like a form of inflammatory bowel disease, and I helped her from that perspective. Like that's something to go to the doctors about and get medication and everything like that, but it wasn't really helping her. And so we helped her from a nutrition and lifestyle perspective. Amazing. And so I started like specializing in helping people with Crohn's and ulcerative colitis.
Wow.
And that was like the nutrition work that I did. And then off the back of that, I started a supplement company that was again, like natural health supplements, but it was like really targeting people that was suffering with chronic health conditions like digestive health, arthritis, all kinds of things. And so I ran that for a few years and sold it, and then eventually got into Rox Lyfe.
Very cool. What and in terms of what's your approach with nutrition then? Is it an elimination type thing, or is it, how do you approach when someone's got an issue or whatever?
Well, it's very much different now. If I work with someone now, it tends to be someone preparing for Hyrox, and
sure.
I mean, it varies, but most commonly they're coming to me for performance. It's not like a digestive health issue or something like that they're looking to resolve, in which case a lot of the time it's more about making sure that you're eating enough and fueling the kind of training that you're doing, and getting like the macros right, getting the supplements right, the right types of foods, like the splits between protein, carbs and fats and everything like that. And on that side of things, people are like typically under eating, under fueling, not necessarily taking the right supplements for performance, because a lot of people coming into this from a whatever body composition, like training in the gym to look good type background, and that doesn't necessarily align with training for performance. So that's like typically that's the kind of person I would see now. But previously, with like serious digestive health issues or autoimmune conditions or something like that, then again it varies from person to person. But like elimination diet is typically a good place to start. And like if you're looking like for common culprit problem foods, then gluten and dairy are like the common ones, and then you can go from there. But while you've still got like a lot of gluten and a lot of dairy in your diet, it tends to be worth like removing those. And I mean, big improvements can come from that. But I mean, that's not everything. There's other things we used to. I mean, it weren't only diet that we sort of looked at. There was supplementation and lifestyle, and stress was a big factor. And then also did like a lot of testing. So it would be like someone might do a stool test, and that would be sent away to the lab. Like, I'm not doing the stool testing itself. Like, we'd analyse the results of that and then see what's going on. And these people might typically be suffering with like some sort of bacterial infection or parasite infection, that type of thing. And then once you identify that, then you can take steps to work on those as well. And that's when like big improvements can come about. So it's not always just diet. If someone's got like a parasite that shouldn't be there, there's only so much that like taking gluten out their diet's going to do.
Cool. Yeah, man, I'm like obsessed with nutrition. It's like it's like my favorite topic. So I like proper geek out about it. And I did Glasgow, what was it, coming up 2 weeks ago now, isn't it? And it was just mega fueling for that. That was the first time I really went to town on just as much as possible, because I'd gone up to pro weight. So, but it was like, I've been training really hard for the last like 7 months or something. Anyways, and I did that. I drove there and back the same day I'm in Cumbria, so South Cumbria. So I got home at 4 a.m. the same night that I've been racing. Obviously, I couldn't sleep, even though I was tired. So that was like 6 o'clock. Then I got up the next day. It was my birthday. So I was like going out for dinner and stuff like that. Anyways, surprise, Monday, just wake up really ill. Like first time in a long time. Really bad cold, man flu. And then that sort of ended up going into like a gut bacterial infection or something. So I was just like, it was so like typical welcome to Hyrox, like what you put your body through. I mean, who knows, maybe I'd have got ill anyways, but it does feel like you put your body through so much stress. And especially with all the travel and stuff. I mean, yeah, I don't know how like some of these athletes do it, where they're traveling around the world and getting on and off planes and changing time zones and stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty extreme, but
they do commonly get ill. To be fair, like I had a call earlier with Jess Told, who raced in Washington, and she's been ill since Washington. And this like it's a combination of stressors. You have to be like, it's a little bit boring to think about, but when you race and you put yourself through that level of stress, and then you combine it with like a bad diet afterwards because you just want to go and eat anything, and then it is often difficult to sleep afterwards. Like that's another stress, and then even just being in a room with thousands of people, like there's probably all kinds of germs and things going around, so it's another stress zone. It's just like that combination of things, whereas in reality, like you do a race, the time after that race is like really the time where you have to be like try and nail in being as good and healthy as possible. And it's hard, but yeah, it's
often if you're the sort of person that gets into Hyrox, you're probably a little bit crazy. And it's like, so many of us get into the gym and stuff as like a therapeutic sort of method, for mental health and stuff. So then you come at the end of the Hyrox, you've whether you've got a good time or whatever, it's quite the buzz, isn't it? And then you have the dip afterwards from all that dopamine, and then kind of like, okay, so you're off, you're not training, you're not going to the gym. If you live on your own, you're not seeing anyone, maybe. So so that week for me, it was just like everything combined. It was really tough, because like you just go from like one extreme to the other. But sometimes like I think like I got into working out for like longevity. And then that sort of got into, then I started doing Hyrox, and you sometimes wonder, I'm like, how healthy is this? Like,
it's probably not the sport you do necessarily for longevity.
No. So it's getting that balance, isn't it? I mean, how many races are you doing a year? Like 2, did you say?
No, I'll do more than 2. I've probably done, I don't know, 5 in the past year or so, 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And that varies, like some will be singles, some will be doubles. Some I won't place a huge focus on because I've been doing this commentary and going out to events. Then sometimes I will just jump into a race without like trying to peak for it or anything like that. But I've done a few in the past year.
Sure. And
doubles takes a lot less out of me than a singles race. I don't know. Have you done a doubles?
I haven't done doubles, no.
Like mentally and physically, a singles race takes a lot out of me. I'm 43, and it does. Like I don't know how people like race from one week to the next or anything like that. I just can't do that. But doubles, even though it's very intense during the race, and it's certainly not easy. I think some people go into it thinking it's going to be easy, which it ain't. But the way I feel afterwards is significantly better, and so I can do that more often.
Yeah. I was speaking to Ricky Banner, who you did on the pod, and we were having a chat, and he was saying that he's done quite a lot just recently, and I was like, I don't know how you do it, man. Like that's hardcore, but yeah, I guess he's a different breed.
yeah, he is. Yeah. He is. I personally like to be like it's not just the physical, it's the mental, and I like to be like really raring and ready to like go to that dark place when I race. And I think if I didn't, like, I probably could do it physically, but would I be like so willing to like really, really, really dig deep that regularly? And personally, I probably wouldn't. I can imagine I would end up like not improving my race time. It would just be like a case of like, keeping it fairly where I am, maybe a bit worse, maybe a little bit better. Whereas I prefer that when I do race, I'm raring to go and I'm ready to go like full send, and then try and beat my previous time or whatever.
Yeah,
that's the way I personally prefer to do it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's the way. Like, I'm trying to figure out sort of my year now, and so I've said no Hyrox now until October, until Birmingham. That's been my thing. You know, I need to work on some other stuff, do more stuff on the podcast. I've got some other things I want to get on with, and I still work full time as well. So, like, obviously, it's managing that. But yeah, sort of quite selfishly, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that sort of yearly periodization from the sort of insights you might have gained. Like, if I'm doing a comp in October, and let's say you do like a 2 to 3 month like training camp, what do you think is a useful sort of like semi summer off, semi deload, kind of chill, but, you know, very non-specific Hyrox, but then maybe like, so what I've been thinking is, maybe I just get loads in the tank in terms of running, or maybe I get, you know, just do loads of rowing, and then another thing, or what sort of insights have you got around that, and what seems to work for people?
It's a good question. I think it's probably a question that not a lot of people think about, and I was talking with someone about this. I think this is something that Hunter does very well. Like, he's obviously an amazing athlete, and he's been doing this for years, and he's strong and he's fast and all those kinds of things. But I think he structures his year and his season very well, whereas some of the other top athletes don't necessarily. Because he knows he's really trying to peak for June, the World Championships in June. Like, he knows that's his ultimate goal. And I mean, he broke the world record in the start of December, but he said after that race, like, he said, I still think of this as like beer drinking season.
Yeah.
And he hadn't really been like doing that much specificity in the sport, or necessarily trying to peak that much for it, because it's just too early to do that.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to him, it was like, you know, I can't remember what he said, like 3-4 months that he gets a bit more specific about it.
Yeah.
Because I think you can just almost flatline. You're just trying to peak too often throughout a year, and it just don't work. So I think thinking about a goal, like we're in March now, and thinking about a goal for October, I think is a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
But again, like, not to do too much specificity now, because it's too long away. So
yeah, it's like I can't help but just be like, oh yeah, I could work on my row, or I could work on my ski, or, you know, do I just have the 3 months off? You know, do I just whatever, just go to a few classes, just chill, and then do that, you know, 3 months out?
Well, it depends what your goal is, and how fast you are. Like, if Hyrox is everything to you, then this, I would say it's worth thinking about what you need to work on most.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, if it is, let's say it's your running, because it ain't going to be rowing or skiing. It's going to, I mean, they're just
the row and the ski are my worst, though, which is like,
yeah, but what's the reality? Like, you're going to make up 20 seconds on those.
Yeah, I suppose.
They're just such small parts of the race. Plus, when you improve your running, it ain't like nothing else is going to improve. Like, those will improve as a result. But let's say it is your running or just your aerobic system, then I mean, it would be about, I would say, like, taking out a lot of the intensity probably now.
Just goes on too.
And then, like, the intensity and the specificity ramps up as you get closer to the event.
Yeah.
But in these, like, earlier months, like, I mean, it might be thinking about another event that you wanted to do that requires less intensity, and that might be like half marathon or a marathon or triathlon type thing that still, like, motivates you to train, but doesn't necessarily look like Hyrox. Because I think it's worth, like, going back to that mental side and, like, being ready to really, like, go full send on it when it comes to it. If you're just doing lunges and wall balls and sleds and running and threshold work now, you'd just be, like, done with it, not only physically but, like, mentally by the time October comes around. So I think, like, taken a lot of that out. A lot of the, pure strength work, and that doesn't mean like pushing sleds. It probably means like squats and deadlifts and whatever excites you.
Yeah.
And then doing like aerobic work, but that might be, longer zone 2 efforts, taking out some intensity, but not all intensity.
Yeah.
And then making it look more Hyroxy as you get closer to the event.
Yeah, I think that's...
Does that answer?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, it's like, aerobic system, don't lose too much strength, or keep your strength, or gain a little bit of strength. I think as a loose goal, that probably would work, wouldn't it?
I think you can think about it as like strength, work on strength and work on your aerobic system, like separately. And like when you're doing your strength stuff, it doesn't need to look like Hyrox. And then as you get closer, that's when you start to combine them a little bit more and get into the compromise work a little bit more and all that sort of stuff. But you can think about them separately now, aerobic and strength, and weight that towards what you needed most. If you were a very, very experienced runner and you just needed to get stronger, then you put more emphasis on the strength work over the next few months. Or it might be the other way around. I don't know. But
for context,
you can work on
I'm
both.
an all right runner. So I'm like, what did I do at Glasgow? Like 4:10, 4:20, 5Ks, 1K, something like that. Which I was pretty happy with. I thought I was going really slow, but I guess like your legs just feel heavy on those big weights. And then I was like, oh wow, they were quite consistent. So, but yeah, I'm looking to like take like 5-6 minutes off my time to get to sub 70. But for me, it's lunges, it's wall balls basically. So it's strength is probably my biggest, where I can make up the most. The most difference. So when you say keep them separate, when you said look at them separately, just so I'm clear on this, are you meaning like keep them in separate blocks, or you just mean literally just do them on different days?
I mean more different days or separate sessions even. At the moment, like I don't like in these next couple of months, I don't think it's worth you necessarily like running 500 meters and then doing 50-meter lunges and then running 500 meters and like doing that. Like that type of session is the type of thing that you'd do closer to the event. Whereas right now, let's say it was your lunges that you like really wanted to work on. That might be like doing really heavy lunges on its own, not aerobically compromised or anything like that. I think makes most sense at this stage when you're this far out from the event to like really work on those. And even like I say heavy lunges, but it might be squats, it might be whatever. But doing it so it looks like a Hyrox now, I don't think would be worthwhile.
Yeah. No, I agree. No, that's useful. Thank you for that.
And then also, like you mentioned, lunges and wall balls, which are the final two stations. So it's worth considering: is it really lunges and wall balls that you need to work on, or is it the fact that you're just so wrecked by the time that you get to them because you're not used to working out for that period of time?
Yeah,
like because you're 70 minutes into the race by then. Is it really lunges and wall balls that you're struggling with, or is it working out for that period of time that you're struggling with? In which case, like building your aerobic system would be worth considering as well.
Yeah, that's not exactly obvious, is it? Where it could be the aerobic system that is just compromising me that much. So doing something, Do you think a marathon would be too much? Do you think half marathon would be better if I did that?
It depends. I mean, it depends how much running you've done. Like, you don't, obviously, if that step up to marathon sort of distance is just going to ruin your legs and risk injury and everything like that, then it could be too much.
Yeah.
I mean, half marathon is quite nice in terms of the time domain is going to be very similar-ish to what you might do a Hyrox in, at least, whereas marathon's going like far beyond that.
Yeah. What do you think about zone 2 training? Are you like a zone 2 advocate? Are you just a bit like, meh? people obsess about it a bit? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's got its place, obviously, but I think it's got its place more so at certain points in the season. So, like we're just talking about in those next couple of months, for example, I think it's got a greater place than it does if you're 2 months out from a race. And I think if you're like very close to a race and you're trying to do a large majority of your work zone 2, my gut feel is like that's a mistake now.
Yeah.
I think because it has increased in popularity so much and people are talking about it so much, I think it would be an easy mistake to make to like feel like you need to do a huge amount of zone 2 at all times.
Yeah.
And eventually that might pay dividends, but it's like longer term strategy. And I think if you're racing in 1-2 months and you're trying to do a ton of zone 2 work and not much intensity or threshold work, I think you'd regret that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense at the start of the base, doesn't it? I mean, one of the things I was thinking, and you might, whether this is a bit too simplistic, but I was just thinking, see how far I can increase my distance staying in that zone 2 or zone 1. This summer, I'm just like, as long as I'm not starting to like jack the heart rate up, if I can just start to increase those kilometers, then that could potentially, I was thinking that could be, but I suppose what you don't see is what it's doing to your legs. So if you,
well, yeah. I mean, zone 2 in theory, you should be able to do continuously, like as long as the muscular side of things doesn't like compromise you too much, then you should be able to do fairly continuously. I mean, I sometimes do a test to check where I am with my running. It's like, it was run, I haven't done it in a while to be fair, but it was run like 5 kilometers, keeping my heart rate at 140 BPM, which is like zone 2, zone 3-ish for me. And seeing how long that takes, and then like tracking that over time, to tracking
like your
seeing
aerobic
how I'm progressing from that
thing.
Yeah. So I was doing a 5K at 140 BPM, and then a kilometer, like having a little rest after that, and then doing a kilometer at, I think it was 155 or 160, and seeing how quickly I could do that kilometer. And I found that was a very good way of just seeing how well I was progressing with my running, and it translated quite well actually, especially the speed of the kilometer to how well I progressed in Hyrox actually, like, because that's like, thresholdy sort of pace, and it's quite good way for me to pace my Hyrox as well. Like if let's say I can run the kilometer 155 in 4:20, that's probably quite good pacing for me in a Hyrox as well. So yeah. So if you wanted to track your progress over time, in like you talked about like trying to run further, I would say probably a better option is to
just see what my speed is on like a 10K.
10K in your zone 2, and picking a heart rate like 130, 140 BPM, whatever is right for you, with a heart rate strap, I should say, not a watch, because they're just too inaccurate.
What's wrong with, what about Whoop? It's got to be the best out of the lot.
I've never
used the
used
watches.
I don't know, to be honest.
Apparently,
I've never used Whoop,
they're about, on average, maybe like 6 BPM out of a heart rate strap. So,
okay.
So apparently, like, I did some research, and sort of out of them, obviously, because they're so tight, versus like other things that are a watch. So, but I was just about to ask you actually, what do you track it with? Which heart rate strap do you use?
I've got the Polar H10 strap.
Polar H10.
And I've got a Polar Vantage watch that the strap connects to.
Okay.
But I know that if I'm not wearing the strap and the watch tries to just do it by itself, then sometimes it just gives me some crazy results.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I completely ignore what that watch tells me.
Yeah.
And I only pay attention when the strap's on.
Yeah, sure. Cool. Thank you for that. So I wanted to ask you about Hunter Macintyre. For anyone who's listening, world champion, record holder, and everything Hyrox. So when was the first time you met him? What was that like? What's he like in person? Is he different to how he is in public?
I first met him at Wit Fitness in London and went up to an event with him there. And that was about a week before he was racing. Oh, no, it was a few days before he was racing in Barcelona. So he sort of left Hyrox, came back, didn't he? And then showed up in Barcelona and broke his own world record there. So I met him a few days before that for the first time. In person, that was. And
was that like, was that a podcast thing? Was it just, you just go over and say hello? Was it, how did that happen?
It was an event. It was just an event that he'd organised, I think, or it was like a builder event for his supplement brand. And we did a weighted Murph workout. Like, there was quite a lot of us there.
That's one of them.
And yeah, it was cool. So yeah, we met him, and I mean, he's a good guy. Yeah. Like, he's quite loud and outspoken and everything like that online, and like he is that person. But at the same time, like, he's very. I think not everyone appreciates that. I think he's a deep thinker about the sport. Like, I think he's very intelligent. He knows how to train. He studies it a lot. He's a big reader. Yeah. Anyone that spent a lot of time with him, I shouldn't say anyone because I can't speak for everyone, but like, truly, like, appreciates him, like, as a good person. Like, I know, like, people that went to stay with him and do one of his camps, and they're like, no, he's super cool, like, super hard worker, puts himself into some dark places, I think, for his training. Like, I think he appreciates that you need to train really, really, really hard to get the sort of results that he wants. I think that comes across from listening to. I've listened to I think I've only listened to one, and maybe some of the highlights with one of your interviews with him. But yeah, I think that comes across. Like, he's obviously, he's at the top, man, isn't he? So it must be cool, but it must be a lot of pressure, you know. There's a lot of pressure. He's a unique person. I think, like, he I think he's probably underappreciated just how fit he is. Like, the shape he's in is unreal. And like, if this sport, like, if Hyrox was whatever 5-10 years on and continues the growth, like, it'd almost be like, he almost deserves to be like this global superstar in a way, I think. But he's in this sport that's got like 100, 200,000 athletes at the moment, and he's the best at that. But I think he deserves to probably be like bigger than he is. But he's unique. Like, he's like charismatic. Like, he's good for the sport. He's good to watch. Good to talk to. He's I can't remember who it was talking about this. I think it was Lauren Weeks, but because he's been to the CrossFit Games, and he didn't like. He's the only person to have, like, not qualified for the CrossFit Games, but managed to get an invite to it as like this random invite to be part of it. He's actually the only person that's ever managed to do that, which is like amazing in itself. And I think it was like a bit controversial at the time, and like a lot of the CrossFit community didn't necessarily welcome it and everything. But it feels like only Hunter could manage to sort of get that invite and do that.
How did you get on when he competed there?
I think he did all right. I mean, this was a few years ago. He did all right. Like, the with CrossFit, it's like, depends how well the workouts suit you. And he's obviously fit. He's strong, but there's a lot of like gymnastic type stuff. And I think like there was workouts with handstand walks and bits like that. He wasn't necessarily so good at as the top guys in that sport. So then he didn't do as well as it might have been if there'd been workouts with a lot of running and that type of thing in there. And I think I can't remember what games it was, but like, he got cut because he wasn't in the top whatever by a certain time. And then there were some workouts after the cut that would have been much more suited towards him. But because of the gymnastic side of things and the high skill that's needed for some of the movements that they have at the games, then he didn't do quite so well, you know.
Yeah. He said to you on one of the episodes, he was talking about squatting in season, and he said obviously he wouldn't touch a squat in season. Would you subscribe to that?
I understand where he's coming from in terms of. I think it's easy with Hyrox to try and do everything. So you're like, right, I've got to get strong, I've got to get powerful, I've got to get fast, I've got to work on my running and my endurance, and like trying to do everything. I think you end up like not improving anything as much as you need to. I think it's worth like thinking about where you need to prioritize, and if it's your running that you need to prioritize, which it often is for a lot of people, then trying to do running and trying to squat, full squat, and ruin your legs on those weight sessions, and then trying to run and like your body to adapt to both, I think can be difficult. So I understand where he's coming from that perspective. And like, so I mean, I think he's open to box squats, whereas like, so you're not going quite so low and like damaging your legs quite so much that you are ready for running sessions. Makes sense.
And would you say, you know, we use the term in season, but in the example that I gave, let's say you're doing one race at the end of the year, would in season be like a month out? Does that make sense in terms of that squatting, avoiding it?
I would say 3 months out, I'd probably, I mean, and this is like, you're talking to 1% really, maybe, like really trying to dial things in, but maybe 3 months out, it doesn't necessarily make sense to squat. And let's be honest, like people are, but I understand what he's talking about. I personally box squat, like front and back, or front or back, and that is a lot kinder on the legs. And so I would still do that very close to a race, but I probably wouldn't do a full squat. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So let's talk about Rox Lyfe Podcast. How long's it been going? Is it 2 years, 2.5 years?
Nearly a couple of years, I think. Nearly a couple of years.
Awesome. And have you been like surprised at sort of this journey that's taken you on, or did you kind of know, like, you know, there was such a...
I'm not sure. There is a gap, really, because there's so many blooming Hyrox podcasts now. So there's definitely not a gap.
You know, honestly, I've maybe seen enough, one more, but yours is the only one that seems to spring to mind. But maybe you don't see that because you're not on the outside.
Well, maybe, yeah. I'm so in it. Yeah,
like I see them all. People that are doing it, but I mean, everyone I speak to, you know, at my gym and stuff, they only talk about your podcast.
Thank you. No, there's certainly others, like whatever fitness racing podcast, Rock Zone guys. You know, there's a few in America now. I started Rox Lyfe for the website. Really, that was the initial thing, and I had no aim with it. It was when I did. It was after my second Hyrox. I was like, right, I'm just going to write an article on this because I think it's going to grow, and I'm just going to make it the best article that I can. Because I've seen, like, in other businesses that I've done, that you can write one good article, and if Google likes it, it will serve you for years. So the intention was to write a good one about what is Hyrox, explaining what it is. So I did that, and with no particular aims for it.
Yeah, I think you're top on that, aren't you? What is Hyrox term? Yeah,
it does. It does
I work
pretty
in
well.
SEO,
yeah,
by the way, so I understand what you. Yeah.
Oh, do you? You can give me some help.
Yeah, happy to. I think you're doing all right by the sounds of it. Did you were you doing blogs and sort of like, were you doing AdSense or anything like that, or like how was that a business before you started doing the podcast, if you make sense, or was it just a hobby?
What Rox Lyfe?
The website. So did you say the website was first before the podcast? Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't even really AdSense at the time. I mean, maybe there was eventually, but so I wrote that article that was doing quite well, and then I was like, I could write an article on this and this and this. Like more and more ideas come to mind, and it's sort of grown from there. But to be fair, when I initially started it, I was like, there's probably like 3 or 4 articles. It's just the same event every time. We're like, how much can you write about it? But it turns out there's quite a lot.
Yeah.
But for a year, like, never really made anything from it in terms of advertising or AdSense or coaching plans or anything like that. But now, just moved to Mediavine. I don't know, which is like AdSense, but tends to be a bit better.
Yeah, I've not heard of them.
So I started the articles, and like some social media, but then I just wanted to like put out more regular content, and obviously like the elite side of the sport was growing a little bit as well around the same time, so I thought it would be cool to start speaking to some of the athletes. But again, I mean, I was a bit hesitant to. I certainly never went into it with the intention of starting a podcast. But it just felt like it made sense at the time, just to like put out more regular content. It was an easier way to keep the content regular rather than trying to think up a new article every week and probably like forcing the article a little bit. I see some content websites on different subjects, and I think like that article was just a bit pointless. They're just putting it out there to for the sake of it, which I never really wanted to do. Like, I think there's a purpose for every article on Rox Lyfe, but when you do podcasts, you can speak to someone and get to know them and find out about their background and their training and everything like that. It became a bit more interesting.
It's a great way to sort of like outsource the subject matter. Find someone, and then they come with all their interests and all the rest of it. So what about is there any sort of episodes that have been like underrated in terms of the rankings or anything? Sorry, the stats. Ones that that you wish more people had listened to, that you thought you got a lot from.
It's hard to say because like the podcast has grown a lot lately, really in line with the sport, to be fair. But there was like an earlier episode that springs to mind is one with George Anderson, and maybe that, I mean, to be fair, it done okay in terms of listeners, but George isn't an elite name in Hyrox, so it doesn't necessarily get as much attention there. And it was like talking about like mindset strategies for training and competing in Hyrox, which kind of like that side of things anyway. But because it was in the earlier days of the podcast and George is an elite athlete, then maybe that if that went out now, I think it would get a ton more attention than it did. Like he's got some really good insights, and people that did listen to it absolutely loved it because it's just something that you can always apply to your training or your racing.
Nice. Yeah, it's good to have that sort of evergreen content. This is why it's such a good medium, isn't it? Well, I'll make sure one that I listen on, 2 that I link it up. So I'll try and get some people through to that one. And what about sort of like your top 3 insights that you've learnt from your guests over the past like 18 months or so, ones that have really risen to the top for you?
A couple of things spring to mind. One is I spoke with Eve Muirhead, who's Olympic gold medalist, and she talked about like when she won Olympic gold, it was because she wasn't afraid to lose anymore, and like and around the same time I'd spoken with Chris Hinshaw, who talked about taking risks, and it resonated with me. Like, I think it's easy in Hyrox to pace yourself and take it easy, and all those things are right, but at the same time you do have to take risks, and that's got me thinking like how much can you push yourself in a Hyrox race or in training, and like take risks like with the intention of like really trying to like break through any barriers and get PBs and things like that. And Funny, so I spoke with Eve about that. I spoke with Chris Hinshaw about that, and then around the same time, I spoke with Hunter. And Hunter, this is when Hunter broke the world record in Stockholm in December, and he talks about that he'd just taken on a new coach, which to me that was like, well, that's a risk in itself. Like he's already brilliant. He's at the top of the sport, and he's taken on a new coach, and he handed over all his programming to this guy. So that's a risk. And then he also said the coach had told him in that race in Stockholm to just run faster, like run faster than he thinks he should be running at that stage of the race early on. And he said he did it, and it hurt, and it was awful, but he broke the world record. And like those kind of 3 episodes, or the 3 things happening at the same time, like really sort of sung to me about taking risks in sport. So that's certainly like one area that this got me thinking a lot. And I've spoken with like Ben Bergeron about it since as well. Like he's worked with some top athletes. So yeah, taking risks, like pushing yourself, seeing what you're capable of. And again, that might be in training. Sometimes I wonder in training whether I'm erring on the side of caution too much. Am I trying to avoid injury too much? And whatever. Am I setting the speed on the treadmill on these intervals, like so that I don't like gas out too soon? If say I've got 10 rounds of intervals, am I like being too cautious early on so that I'm not ruined by interval 7? Is it better to like really, really try and push it and risk being ruined by interval 7? That's something I'm leaning into a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah, it sort of reminds me a little bit of, I spoke to you about Matty Green and previously, and he did my programming for my last 2 Hyroxes. And there's a period like 2-3 weeks out where it gets really intense, and it's basically like, I think like 4 days on the bounce of like high specific tempo, 70 minutes, 80 minutes. Like, and I remember the first time I was like, this must be a mistake. I shouldn't be doing this on the bounce. There's way too much in here. And I thought, I'll just do it. But what it did was it forced me to be like, right, okay, I need to really recover well. I need to eat amazing if I'm going to get through this week. And then by doing it, it was like, I had to really get. That's when I really started nailing the whole stretching down, warming down properly, because you can't mess around with that if you're doing so much, can you? So for me, it was like, oh wow, like it gave me that confidence, like I can train really hard days after each other. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing, and making sure I'm using the sauna and ice baths and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, yeah, it is amazing what you can do if you're kind of forced. And then the feeling that you would get once I got through that weekend, I remember like the following week, and then when I'd then go into a race or going into my next block of training, I just feel like, yeah, you'd feel that increase if you were able to get through it. But I guess a lot of people, if they're still going out drinking and stuff, and they're trying to cram it in, and they're eating shit, then they're probably going to get injured and it won't work. But if you take it seriously enough, then I guess it can. I think we're running out of time. You need to go at past, don't you?
I've probably got 15 minutes.
Yeah, I've only got
if you want me.
Yeah, a couple more things to cover. So, what about supplements? So is there any sort of, if someone looked at your supplement stack, is there anything that would surprise people? Anything sort of novel that's not creatine and beta-alanine?
I'll give you one. Rhodiola rosea is one that I am using lately, that I'm liking, and I'm using it on, and I'll be honest with you, I actually not 100% convinced like what the research shows. I think it's positive without being like 100% certain that you should be taking this. But I'm using it on the days that I train. When I've got a tough session, I'm having it before, and I think it gives me energy, and I think it leaves me feeling less ruined after the session. So that when I say it's interval session, and I normally train about 9-10 o'clock in the morning. If I take that, it leaves me like my mental clarity for the rest of the day, so I'm able to then go and work and not feel like I just want to go to bed or whatever. I think that's a good one to take. I'm certainly liking it, and I'm trying not to take it too often. I think with that type of thing, I think maybe you could cycle it, and the benefits would wear out. Like you wouldn't necessarily get the benefits from it. So I'm trying to take it on the days where I really feel I need it, and if it's like an easier day, I think, well, I'm not going to bother with that. It's probably a bit like caffeine in a way. So yeah,
awesome.
That's one.
What do you know which brand it is you take? He's got it.
I'm just using. It's just a cheap one off of Amazon. Supplemented.co.uk.
Is it the green bag?
I think I got it from Amazon.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the one I've got. I didn't notice much of it, and I was wondering whether I needed to change the brand. But interesting how it's worked well for you. But but I probably just have too many supplements. Like, which one's working? It's been interesting that having this, a couple of weeks off and not being well, of just like, well, you say caffeine. Actually, I love my coffee. But as soon as I get ill, there's no coffee, there's no supplements or whatever. So it's been quite nice not to like constantly taking all these capsules and stuff, because it sort of makes you think, oh yeah.
And it's another one I'll add. It's not that out there, but is electrolytes. Like, I think that's reasonably important for people training for Hyrox. I think you could get very sweaty training for this, and a lot of the people I speak to, like on nutrition calls, a lot of them are struggling with fatigue. And to be fair, that's like probably because they're underfueled and not eating enough carbs and that type of thing. But a lot of the time as well, I feel like electrolytes would be beneficial, reasonably cheap, easy to take.
Which ones do you have?
I think that's so I use at the moment I'm using X Endurance to do one, and then also another good option is Elite, ELETE, which I've used for years, to be fair. But that's just drops, flavorless drops, so that's quite convenient if you're traveling or whatever, and you just need to drop some into your water. But then, like, I'm using X Endurance ones, which taste pretty good as well. So it's a couple of options,
have these. So I tried a few different ones, and but they are quite expensive, aren't they? Certainly if you're getting the flavored ones, and you don't want to buy the crappy ones. But I came across just the bulk. Bulk have like a powder, unflavored, and actually, if you are on a budget, it's so cheap. So if you can do without like the lemon flavor or whatever, and you don't mind drinking salt water, I found they definitely helped. Yeah, drinking them certainly on the lead up.
And even I mean, if you didn't want to buy them, just like add in some good quality salt to your meal, like 2 meals every now and then. It's probably beneficial. Yeah.
Awesome. Over time. Yeah. Okay. And just on podcasting. So this is, I was going to say this is a fairly new project for me. I've actually been doing it over a year, but my biggest bottleneck is, not hairs in my mouth. My biggest bottleneck is publishing, actually. And I think a lot of it, to be honest, I think I got too up in the weeds about editing for a very long time. And I think I've just realized I need to be a bit more brutal and just get them out there. But what have you got any sort of pointers, tips, anything that you overcame similar or?
I don't edit a huge amount, and I can see like if you try to, that takes a lot of time. Editing is just so timely, kills me, to be honest. So I tend not to edit unless something has gone wrong with the quality of the audio, or if someone says something and they say, "Let me say that again," or whatever. But otherwise, I tend not to edit it. I do like do a separate introduction at the start of every podcast, like introducing the person. That's pretty easy, to be fair. I'll just write that and say it, and then stitch it all together. So I don't do tons of editing, and then I just upload it.
Just get on with it.
and to be, for me, I feel like I'm committed. I mean, it's self-enforced, but like to doing a weekly episode. And I think having like deciding what your regularity is going to be, and making sure you stick to that will force you to do it. So it's easy. It's hard to find people to speak to and get the time in and all that sort of thing. But if you're committed to doing a weekly episode or even a monthly episode or whatever it is, and then making sure you stick to that, I think it can just like force your hand a little bit.
I think definitely need to do that. I think probably I started with too much, like it was like weekly, and then it was just I couldn't even get one out a month. So maybe I need to reduce that to something a little bit more achievable. But like I say, I'm looking
weekly is like fairly it's fairly relentless. Trying to do it weekly is like especially if you haven't like built up a backlog of them. It's like, God, right now I've just done an episode, like really good episode, really happy with it. But then it's immediately into right, I've got to find the next person to speak to, and then research, and then speak to them, and then edit it and upload it and do that. And like try, especially if you're like working and doing another job and doing other stuff at the same time, like weekly is like really, really tough to stick to. So I mean, personally, if it was me, like if you want advice and like you've not been doing it that regularly, I would just say, right, monthly, I'm just going to do it. And just making sure you stick to that monthly and making that one episode every month as good as possible. And then once you get into that rhythm, then you can increase the cadence a little bit from there and do that gradually. It's not that revolutionary, but it might help.
Good advice never is it? Or, it's kind of back to basics. We can, because I've been thinking, maybe I just need to cram. Maybe I need to do like a load, and then maybe I need to do seasons. Maybe, but yeah, I think I'm looking forward to this next like few months, having some time off Hyrox and focusing more on the podcast and sort of little businessy things that I'm doing and little side hustles. That's the buzzword, isn't it? Side hustles. We love a side hustle.
Even thinking about like what you want it to be. Is it you're interviewing? Is it like would you be happy to do one on your own, like just talking, which is tough, to be fair. But then like, would it be this is just going to be every episode is only going to be 10 minutes, and would you find that like if it's 10 minutes every week, would you find that easier to stick to? It's like whatever suits your style, whatever you enjoy.
Well, I think, I'm gonna have to do one which is just me. So I started at the start of the year. Basically, I put a thing out on my Instagram and about setting up like an accountability group. So I got this WhatsApp group. It's amazing. And there's like 14 of us. Some people from the gym, some people from just like Instagram, some kind of random, like it's proper random. And it's just people, it was just us setting goals every quarter and having accountability tasks. And it's obviously free. And it's amazing. And we've got people like hitting like weight loss goals, 5K PBs. And everyone's like, I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for this group. So one of my things is to publish 12 episodes by Q1. So right now there's 2 episodes. I've actually now got, I think if I do one on my own, that's enough to publish them all. But I'm literally just going to have to dump them because if I do one a week, I won't hit it. But again, it's like, if I hadn't have had that deadline, it wouldn't have forced me to think, maybe I'll do a solo podcast, or maybe I'll just publish a load, and just, I think it allows you to just sort of mix it up a little bit. And try and keep it, enjoyable. Like, Yeah, because I used to like really overthink them and do like all this prep, and of course I've prepped for today, but I think it's like just relax, just enjoy it, because what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. There was something I think it was Tim Ferriss talked about as
I know,
well.
if
you're struggling to
I'm a
to
big
stick
Tim
to
Ferriss. All them podcasters, yeah.
yeah.
But Tim was my original.
Yeah, but it was like don't you sort of decide like a cause that you really like don't agree with.
That's what I did.
And like say like I'm going to donate money.
This is literally what I did. So I found the most corrupt charity that I could find. This is literally a Tim Ferriss thing. So there's a charity called, and allegedly, the American Cancer Charity or something like that. And apparently it's like this CEO takes like huge dividends and everything or whatever. So I was like, right, I'll donate 250 quid to them if I don't do these episodes. So I have like 15 days basically I've got like 2 weekends to smash a load of podcasts out. But I've got to do it. I can't afford to do it. So it's like, well, I'm doing it. It's done.
That's a decent chunk of money you've committed to there as well.
Exactly. So it's like, so I know I'll do it. So cool. But yeah, so it's it's awesome, man. It's good fun, and I've enjoyed this. So thank you. What before we wrap up?
Me too.
What's next for you? What's the sort of what's the next few years looking like for Rox Lyfe? Have you got a plan?
Honestly, no, like very little plan in reality. I want to just almost continue on the road that we're on, like in terms of like the podcast and the website, and making it the go-to place for people competing in Hyrox or interested in Hyrox. And as the sport grows, like we can continue to grow with that. And so I feel like I should have like a better answer, really, but it's just to continue to be like the go-to source for anyone competing in Hyrox. And eventually I might also do some more work on YouTube. I upload the podcast to YouTube, but doing a little bit more, whatever, helping with movement standards and just doing videos to help people on on that platform as well, which takes time and editing and all that sort of stuff. But that's probably like the next step for us over and above what I'm doing already.
Awesome. Yeah, I think like right now you're in it. Do you know what I mean? These are the golden years. You're doing it, so it's like everyone's in different chapters. Do you know what I mean? So I'm still trying to like get to a point where I'm established, and you're in it now. So it's like just enjoy it. I mean, you don't have to, you don't have the goals. You just keep enjoying it, keep putting it out there, and just go along for the ride. And that's what's exciting about what you're doing with Hyrox, because like you say, it's only as big as not only as, but it's likely whatever the sport does, you'll go along with it. So
it is an exciting time in the sport. I think like in a few years' time, we might look back on these days and be like, oh, they were like exciting times as the sport was really growing, and all these brands are trying to come in and get involved, and everyone's like sort of jostling for their own position in the sport and the community. So it is good times. I am just enjoying it. It's not something like I have to do, but I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying the podcast. I'm enjoying putting out articles. The reason I probably haven't done YouTube yet is like I don't particularly enjoy all the video shooting and editing and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm just enjoying it and riding the wave really at the moment.
Awesome. And where should people go? Website, address, all that sort of stuff, socials?
Roxlyfe.com, ROXLYFE, at the Rox Lyfe on Instagram, Rox Lyfe Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And that's pretty much it, I think. And if you want coaching, like we do that, we've got a 12-week plan, we've got a 12-week doubles plan. We've got personalised coaching. Yeah,
sick.
That's it, I think.
No, it's been a pleasure, mate. And I'll we'll hopefully do it again sometime. But have a
definitely. Good luck with
thank you,
with what you're doing.
Have a good day. Have a nice weekend. See you, Greg.
And you, cheers.
Cheers, man.